Yesterday, what we found interesting is that POTUS came out and said that he would like to see 90% of all American adults have access to the vaccine within a 5, or at least be able to make appointments within 5 miles of their home by April 19th. Obviously, we had concerns because when we're looking at the numbers from the CDC and Pennsylvania Department of Health, we're seeing like a number of 40% of our seniors are fully vaccinated, qualify under 1A. Are you seeing anything that would suggest that we can hit that target of April 19th?
Well, the task force meets later this afternoon. I'm sure we'll get an update on that, and we'll get an update of as to where we precisely stand within 1A. I mean, I certainly think a goal of May 1st, which I know the Biden administration previously talked about and the governor has talked about and the task force has discussed in recent weeks, for the broader public, May 1st, I think, is a good goal for us. I think that's an achievable goal based on the projections with respect to supply and where we'll be in April mid-April with respect to 1A, 1B, 1C, and the broader public. I think what we need to again be mindful of is, from my perspective, is we need to maintain that commitment that we have to the folks in 1A. We said to folks in 1A that by the end of this month, that if you've not received a dose of vaccine, that you'll at minimum be scheduled to receive vaccine in early April. The last numbers that I've seen, now these are old, this is from the end of last week, was that we're projecting that we're about 2.9 million 1A that have received a dose of vaccine. That's of the 3.6 million that are eligible, assuming an 80% uptick. The total universe is more like 4.5 million. So about 700,000 folks that are remaining. Now, what I'm hearing from providers, and I'm starting to call some of our providers just to get a sense as to where they believe they stand with their wait lists and the folks that are seeking vaccine in 1A. And I'm starting to receive some feedback that they are anticipating that their supply is going to exceed the demand within 1A very soon. So I think that's all very, very good news. I mean, it certainly points to we're on a positive trajectory in terms of being able to open up the vaccine to everybody in Pennsylvania by April 19. That seems to me to be aggressive at the moment. But again, I'll get an update later today from the task force and get a better sense as to where we stand, get updated numbers of supply projections. But I certainly think by the second half of April, we are on a trajectory to be able to open up 1C and to begin to have a conversation about the broader public for sure. I think May 1 is absolutely achievable based on what I'm seeing.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, because usually you've got a better handle on it than I do, what you expect to see in terms of that supply, because it's rapidly improving, and we expect, and the key here is Johnson & Johnson to improve to a level that we haven't seen yet. So do you think that maybe the president is seeing something that we haven't quite seen yet in terms of maybe that supply, that one dose vaccine that would, because that can dramatically change things when you talk about that one dose?
No question. I mean, the Johnson & Johnson is a game changer. And, in the near term, as we expected, the supply sort of dropped off. But we will begin to see that increase over the next couple of weeks. And as you know, the task force has taken the approach that first we're going to fulfill our commitment to folks in 1A. I think that's absolutely a commitment we must maintain to our seniors and folks that are in 1A. And then we have a number of targeted groups, vulnerable groups within 1B that we've made the policy choice to prioritize. We need to finish the teachers, vaccinating the teachers so we can get students back in school. I support that. I believe that's important. 2, police officers, our first responders, our corrections officers, our farm workers and grocery store workers, and using the federal pharmacy partnership with Johnson & Johnson to very rapidly vaccinate those folks in early April. So yes, to your point, by late April, we should be at a point where we're seeing Moderna and Pfizer, those vaccine continues to, that supply is increasing. It's projected to dramatically increase. And then we'll have Johnson & Johnson that we're going to be able to then utilize for the broader public. And so, yes, it's very likely that they're seeing something, Operation Warp Speed at the federal level, that gives them an indication that we're going to be able to more aggressively move to the broader public, which is outstanding news. But again, I continue to, my personal view is that we have to maintain that commitment that we've made to folks in 1A. And I think we're on track to do that. But as I've said, I'm making calls to our providers to try to get a sense of where they think they stand. I'm asking constituents who are in 1A to share their experiences with me. I want to hear from folks that have not yet been contacted to schedule if they're looking to be vaccinated. We need to get a handle of what that number is, because one of the challenges by just purely looking at wait lists, and I think we've talked about this before, Ryan, is that folks during this period where the supply or the demand far exceeded the supply, is folks were going anywhere and everywhere they could to get vaccine. And so folks may be on multiple wait lists, been vaccinated, and we don't know that, and they're still on a wait list, even though they've been vaccinated at another provider. And so we're asking folks to provide information, providers to give feedback on that, and certainly encouraging folks that they've received that vaccine and they're still on a wait list to try to take steps to be removed from that wait list, which will help with the scheduling process. But again, the trajectory looks to be very, very positive.
Another question I had is, you're not immune to it. You're just like all of us. I have friends in other states who are my age, who are healthy, people that are in their 20s that are getting vaccinated, and it's frustrating. Why do you think we are still in 1A? I mean, if you had to put your finger on just one thing, why are we still in 1A when other states are almost seemingly wide open? I know there's size things, but then there are other things where states are pretty, on the same plane that are it just feels like they're way ahead of us.
Yeah, some of it has to do certainly with policy choices that other states have made to open up more broadly sooner than what Pennsylvania has. Certainly a component is just the sheer size of the state and the number of folks who are in 1A, total universe of 4.5 million. And again, when you look at the total universe of all of those in Pennsylvania who will be eligible at some point to receive vaccine, it's approximately 9.2 million. So half of that, that total universe, that full universe, are folks that are 65 and older, those that are in 1A. Of course, Pennsylvania also has a challenge, just the sheer geographic size. So in addition to the population is the size, and it's a very diverse state in terms of our geography. And so, yes, we have highly populated areas of the state in the southeast, the south central here in the capital region, the west and Allegheny County. But you get into the northwest, the north central, the northeastern part of Pennsylvania, folks are spread out. And so there are challenges just with the geography, with the size of the state, the population of the state, and again, the 4.5 million folks in 1A who qualify to be vaccinated. We just have yet to reach the point where the supply has caught up to that full demand. We're getting there.
The federal government could have done more, Ryan. Do you think that like the federal, because they always say it's equitable, right? But it doesn't feel equitable when a 20-year-old can get vaccinated in Maryland, but we can't get, my grandmother vaccinated here until just this week. I mean, is that a federal problem and not a state problem? Because it's starting to feel like it.
So I think, yeah, it's interesting, and it's a great point. As I understand it, and I've had numerous conversations with the Pennsylvania Department of Health to try to understand how allocation decisions, because I've been very focused on how allocations are being made, decisions are being made from the state to counties, from the state to providers. And we have sought to put performance measures to ensure that we're driving throughput, we're driving efficiency. We've sought to ensure that we are making allocation decisions based on population in counties over the age of 65, the infection rate, the COVID death rate. As I understand from the federal government, it's just a straight percentage distribution to each state in the union. So I don't believe it's based on, as I understand it, not based on any performance metrics or on metrics that are associated with the actual population of the states, and certainly population of the states of folks that are age 65 and older. So to have the federal government making the decision just a certain percentage across the board to each and every state, and then the states then putting in place different metrics, different allocation models, that does pose a real challenge. So I think to your point, I think that as I understand, I think that may very well be an issue.
Yeah, we're like 1 or 2 in terms of like elderly population. I mean, in the nation. So it
Oh
makes
yeah, again, when
that. I
you
mean, in
look
my
at it,
opinion, that would be the #1 reason why we're behind. I just haven't heard anybody talk about it. So I just,
so
one of
I
the,
mean that's my perception also. I mean, I
yeah.
again, and we've talked about this before the governor formed the task force. I had a lot of concerns over.
Well, we stumbled through February. I agree.
There's no question. It was a slow rollout. The planning, the communication was certainly subpar, and I think we've seen dramatic improvement. Still a lot of work to be done. And I emphasize that each and every time I have an interview, is I certainly recognize there's a lot of work to be done, but I think we've made tremendous progress over the last 4 or 5 weeks. But I think to your point, I think it is certainly a challenge, the allocation that Pennsylvania has received in relationship to other states, particularly when you compare that to the total universe of folks that we have in 1A. Again, 4.5 million Pennsylvanians, total universe of 9.2, 4.5 are those that are in 1A.
Yep.
And again, the whole purpose of 1A and why I think it's so important to maintain this commitment is the folks that are in 1A, those age 65 and older, and those with other conditions, those are the folks that are most likely to face hospitalization or serious hospitalizations if they were to get COVID. And so we've made the policy decision. I think it's appropriate to say we want to try to keep folks out of the hospital. And so who are those most likely to be hospitalized with COVID? Let's prioritize those folks first with COVID. Obviously, our healthcare workers are also a critical component of that. And then within 1B, you have the policy decisions around our educators, our first responders, our state police, corrections officers, and others. But the good news is, again, the supply is catching up, is projected to do so even more in the coming weeks. And I think very soon we're going to it's hard to imagine, I know, but we're going to be having a conversation about now the supply exceeding the demand, and then trying to encourage and educate folks to be vaccinated.